You know, the idea for this video came while I was watching a documentary on the Monterey Jazz Festival from 1967, and I thought, what are three kind of legendary classic rock albums that, not only have really stood the test of time, but prove that the 60s were a pretty good decade for music. And if you were to ask me, I would rank the best decades for music like this. And a lot of my friends, know this already, but if you don't and you're following this channel, or if you do and you're following this channel, you may or may not know that I rank them accordingly in the 20th century. The 1980s, no surprise there. The 1960s, the 1990s, the 1970s. In that order. In the 50s, I don't know, take it or leave it. I don't do a lot of 50s material on this channel because with respect to rock, I think it really did have its genesis in the 1960s when the Beatles hit these shores in 1964. I'm Michael Douglas. Welcome back to Dr. Pundit, where we talk about music, not medicine. And three legendary classic rock albums from 1967. The Summer of Love, 1967, is a storied period in popular music that, of course, will never be forgotten. I wish I could have lived it. It was before I was born, but, it's much storied. And I chose three kind of psychedelic rock albums that I think typify that year. And, hopefully most people will agree with this. And I'll just throw my 2 cents in. I'm a child of the 80s, but I love 60s music as well. So let's get started. Pink Floyd's with The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. And whimsical title alone, right? Syd Barrett led this masterpiece in 1967, and it sounds fantastic today, going on 60 years. It's your classic kind of psychedelic rock that you would expect from the era. But there's a gloomy, dark comedy sort of vibe that makes it stand out. And while Syd Barrett tends to get all the love for this album, when you listen to it, I would really not count out the stylings of Richard Wright's keyboard on this particular album. It is nothing to scoff at, just as critical to this album as Syd Barrett is. Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Now, who else would anybody else think about during this era than Jefferson and Airplane, right? And when you think of Jefferson Airplane in 1967, you think of Surrealistic Pillow. I would just say about this album, it's the kind of the gift that keeps on giving. Yes, it kickstarted their career that ended somewhat sadly with Starship. But, we're talking about 1967, in the 1960s, why this album was so emblematic of the period. It's got a lot of acid rock, but there are tinges of blues and folk that really give this album a lot of flavor. Everybody knows, of course, White Rabbit, Somebody to Love. I would argue for a track called Today. Great song that I think embodies all of these elements on this tremendous album. I don't even have to talk any more about this album because everybody knows it who loves to listen to music from this period. I just think I have to include it in this list of three cool albums because it really deserves to be here. It just really does. Finally, the self-titled album by Big Brother and the Holding Company. Few solo female voices are as associated with this era than Janis Joplin. Her band, Big Brother and the Holding Company, dropped one of the best albums of that era. I would argue maybe the best album in 1967, and it was their debut. Legendary right off the bat. This album is legendary, and not just for Janis Joplin's pipes. This psychedelic album is the sum of all of its parts. I picked the song Down on Me as representative of the album, but I think the whole album just kicks, and it's really worth a thorough listen from start to finish. Big Brother and the Holding Company, the self-titled album from 1967. And I think those are three fantastic albums that just, a lot of times I get ideas for videos by either passively listening to music that I like and trying to think of some sort of connection that I can bring to the audience. Certainly 1967 is a very just monumental year within the decade, but also one could argue within the scope of the 20th century in terms of music that was critical to the evolution of pop music that I talk about so much on this channel. So I hope you'll agree with those three albums. and listen to them if you are not as familiar with a couple of the other albums, as I know you probably are with Surrealistic Pillow, but listen to them all after listening to this particular episode. And I think I'm going to go ahead and finish listening to Big Brother and the Holding Company after I record this. I'm Michael Douglas. Thanks for watching.